He walked in whistling, expecting his naive wife to be cooking pasta, unaware that I was standing there with his secret phone in one pocket and a box cutter in the other. My husband fell to his knees in our living room, sobbing that his business had collapsed and creditors were coming to take everything we owned. He begged me to sell my late mother's sapphire necklace, my only inheritance, just to keep us fed and keep him out of jail. I wiped his tears and handed over my legacy to a pawn shop, thinking I was saving our marriage. I didn't know I was funding his secret offshore accounts while he planned to leave me penniless in a studio apartment. The last night in our sprawling Victorian home felt less like a move and more like a funeral. The cinematic lighting was stark, with moonlight filtering through the bare windows, casting long prison bar shadows across the empty hardwood floors. Dust motes danced in the pale beams, swirling around the stacks of cardboard boxes that now contained my entire life. The house, usually warm and filled with the scent of vanilla candles, now smelled of packing tape and old cardboard. It echoed. Every footstep, every sigh bounced off the walls, emphasizing the hollowness of our situation. Marcus was sitting on the floor in the corner of the living room, his head in his hands. He was the picture of a broken man. His usually immaculate suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. He was rocking back and forth slightly, muttering about numbers, debts, and failures. "I'm so sorry, Elena," he choked out, not looking up. "I tried. God, I tried so hard to save it. But the market, the investors, they pulled out. It's all gone. The house, the cars, the savings. They're going to freeze everything by Monday." I walked over to him and knelt down, wrapping my arms around his shaking shoulders. I felt the tension in his muscles. I thought it was fear. Now I know it was the effort of suppressing a laugh. "We'll figure it out, Marcus," I whispered, resting my chin on his shoulder. "It's just money. We have each other, that's what matters." You know, it's funny how the smallest details can unravel everything. You think you have a handle on things, then one misplaced word, one lingering glance, and the whole meticulously constructed facade just crumbles. The sweat on his brow, the tremor in his lip, it was perfect. It's not just the business, it's personal liability. If I don't come up with $50,000 by Friday to pay off the bridge loan, they'll press criminal charges. I could go to prison, Elena. Prison. My heart stopped. Prison? Marcus was a soft man. He enjoyed silk sheets and espresso machines. He wouldn't survive a week in prison. 50,000? I asked, my voice trembling. But we sold the cars. We sold the furniture. We have nothing left. Marcus looked at me. Then his gaze drifted down to my neck, specifically to the sapphire pendant that rested against my collarbone. It was a deep, velvety blue, surrounded by antique diamonds. My mother had worn it on her wedding day. Her mother had worn it before her. It was the only thing I had left of them. "Not nothing," Marcus whispered. I instinctively reached up and touched the cold stone. "Marcus." "No, not this. Anything but this. And I know," he began to cry again, burying his face in my lap. "I'm a monster for even thinking it. Forget it. I'll go to jail. I deserve it. I failed you." He knew exactly which buttons to press. He knew I couldn't stand to see him suffer. He knew my loyalty was my fatal flaw. "Stop it," I said, unclasping the necklace with shaking fingers. The click of the clasp sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You are not going to jail." I held the necklace in my hand. The sapphire caught the moonlight, glowing with a deep, inner fire. It felt heavy, weighted with history and memories. "Take it," I said, pressing it into his hand. "Sell it. Pay the loan." Marcus looked at the necklace, then at me. For a split second, the mask slipped. I saw relief, yes, but also something else. Greed. Pure, unadulterated calculation. But it was gone so fast I thought I imagined it. "You're saving my life, Elena," he said, kissing my hands. "I promise I'll buy it back one day, once I get back on my feet. I swear." The next morning, we moved. Not to a smaller house, not to a townhouse, but to a cramped fourth-floor walk-up in the grittiest part of the city. The apartment smelled of boiled cabbage and stale cigarette smoke that had seeped into the peeling wallpaper. The windows rattled every time a heavy truck drove by outside. The kitchen was a hot plate and a mini-fridge that hummed aggressively. I stood in the center of the room, holding a box of kitchen supplies. The cinematic contrast was jarring. Yesterday I was the mistress of a manor. Today I was standing on linoleum that was curling at the edges, listening to the couple next door scream at each other through paper-thin walls. "It's temporary," Marcus said, dumping a box of his clothes on the futon we were using as a bed. "Just until I find a consulting gig." 6 months, tops. "I can pick up extra shifts at the diner," I said, trying to be optimistic. I saw a help wanted sign down the street. "Yin Angel," Marcus said, checking his watch. An expensive watch he had miraculously managed to keep, claiming it was a fake that no pawn shop wanted. "I'm going to head to the library to use the internet. Need to update my resume and email some contacts." He left me there to unpack, to scrub the mold from the bathroom tiles, to try and make a home out of a hovel. For 3 weeks, this was our life. I worked double shifts at a diner, coming home smelling of grease and exhaustion, my feet swollen and aching. Marcus spent his days job hunting. He would come home looking stressed, complaining about how hard the market was, how nobody was hiring bankrupt CEOs. I cooked cheap pasta on the hot plate. We ate in silence, the air heavy with unspoken resentment and despair. I watched him grow distant. He was always on his phone, a cheap, cracked smartphone we had bought at a convenience store because we had disconnected our old plans to save money. But there were cracks in his story. Tiny, hairline fractures that I was too tired to notice at first. Like the way he never seemed hungry when I made dinner, despite claiming he hadn't eaten all day. Like the new, expensive cologne I smelled on his shirt one evening. A scent he definitely didn't own before. Like the fact that he never let me see his phone screen. Then came the laundry day. It was raining again, a relentless, gray drizzle that matched my mood. I was gathering the dirty clothes to take to the laundromat down the block. I picked up Marcus's heavy rain jacket, the one he wore every day to his library sessions. It felt heavy. I checked the pockets. I didn't want to wash a tissue or a receipt by accident. My hand brushed against something cold and sleek in the inside breast pocket. I pulled it out. It was a phone, not the cracked cheap Android we shared. This was the latest model iPhone 15 Pro, encased in sleek black leather. It looked brand new, my man. I stared at it. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe he found it? Maybe a friend lent it to him? But as I held it, the screen lit up, a notification. The background photo wasn't me. It wasn't a generic landscape. It was a photo of a yacht, a gleaming white yacht on turquoise water, and the notification was from a banking app. Swiss Global Bank. Alert. Wire transfer of $50,000 received. $50,000. The exact amount I had sold my mother's necklace for. The exact amount he said he needed to pay the bridge loan to avoid jail. My breath hitched in my throat. The room started to spin. The sound of the leaking faucet faded into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. He hadn't paid a loan. He had transferred the money to himself. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't know the passcode. But then, another notification popped up. A text message. From estate agent Monaco. "Mr. Sterling, the villa is ready for your arrival next month. Did you finalize the divorce papers with the wife yet?" I dropped the jacket. The phone stayed in my hand. I looked around the squalid apartment. The peeling paint. The mold. The futon. He wasn't bankrupt. He wasn't suffering. He was role-playing poverty. He was forcing me to live in squalor, stripping me of my inheritance, my dignity, and my comfort, all to facilitate an exit strategy where he kept everything and I was left with nothing. He wasn't at the library. He was probably eating steak lunches while I scrubbed tables for tips. The grief I had felt for the last month, the sympathy for my broken husband, evaporated instantly. It was replaced by a cold, hard knot of rage in the pit of my stomach. I heard footsteps on the stairs outside, the heavy, confident tread of Marcus returning home. He was whistling. I looked at the phone. I looked at the door. He expected to find his beaten-down, supportive wife making him pasta. He expected the naive girl who sold her mother's legacy for him. He was about to walk into a room with a woman who had nothing left to lose. I shoved the phone into my pocket, right next to my box cutter from the diner. The key turned in the lock. He raised his glass to toast the sale of his shell company, but the color drained from his face when I sat down at the table and placed his burner phone next to his martini. I shoved the $50,000 burner phone back into my husband's wet jacket pocket exactly 1 second before he walked through the door. If I had confronted him right then, screaming about the offshore accounts and the yacht in Monaco, he would have destroyed the evidence and left me with nothing but this moldy apartment. Instead, I swallowed my rage, forced a smile, and decided to play the role of the devoted, clueless wife one last time, until I could steal everything he was trying to hide. "Honey, I'm home," Marcus announced, shaking his umbrella in the hallway. Water sprayed onto the peeling linoleum floor. He looked flushed, happy, too happy for a man who had supposedly spent 8 hours begging for work at the public library. "Hi," I said, turning back to the hot plate. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the wooden spoon until my knuckles turned white. "How was the hunt?" "Brutal," Marcus sighed, shedding the jacket. The jacket that held the key to his deception, and tossing it casually onto a chair. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. He smelled of rain, but underneath that, faint traces of truffle oil and expensive wine. He had been dining out. "Nobody is hiring, Elena. They look at my resume, see the bankruptcy, and show me the door. It's humiliating." "I'm sorry," I whispered, stirring the watery tomato sauce. "At least we have dinner. It's just pasta again, but it smells great," he lied smoothly, sitting down at the wobbly card table we used for dining. I watched him eat. The cinematic framing of the scene was grotesque. Here was a man worth millions, slurping cheap noodles in a room that smelled of mildew, pretending to be destitute just to punish me, to break me. Every time he complained about the drafty window or the noise from the street, I felt a new crack form in my heart. He wasn't just hiding money, he was getting off on my suffering. He enjoyed watching me struggle to support him. It was a power trip. You know, it's funny how the smallest details can unravel everything. You think you have a handle on things, then one misplaced word, one lingering glance, and the whole meticulously constructed facade just crumbles. He wanted the ring too. He wanted to strip me of every last piece of my history before he discarded me. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had vowed to love and cherish. "Let me think about it," I said softly. "I'm really tired, Marcus. Double shift tomorrow." "Of course, babe," he smiled, that charming, predatory smile. "You rest. You're the backbone of this family right now." We went to bed on the lumpy futon. Marcus fell asleep almost instantly. Why wouldn't he? He had no worries. His future was secure in a Swiss bank account. I lay awake, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. The streetlights outside cast shifting orange shadows across the room, creating a noir atmosphere. I waited. 1 hour. 2 hours. When his breathing turned into a deep, rhythmic snore, I moved. I slid out from under the thin blanket, my bare feet silent on the cold floor. I crept toward the chair where his jacket hung. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought he would hear it. I reached into the pocket. The phone was still there. Cool, sleek, heavy. I took it into the bathroom and closed the door, turning on the fan to mask any noise. I sat on the edge of the cracked bathtub and pressed the power button. The screen lit up. The yacht photo mocked me. "Enter passcode." I stared at the keypad. 6 digits. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried the date of his mother's death. Incorrect. Phone will be disabled for 1 minute after 2 more failed attempts. My hands were sweating. I closed my eyes and tried to think like him. He was arrogant. He was sentimental about his own success, not ours. What was the most important day in his life recently? The day he went bankrupt, the day he successfully fooled everyone, the day he transferred the assets. July 14th, on Nang, on a other nope. Right, I typed it in. 1, N, 1, 4, 2, 3. The lock icon clicked open. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I was in. I went straight to the photos. I needed to know the scope of the lie. The gallery was a catalog of betrayal. There were photos of him on the yacht, holding a glass of champagne, dated last week, when he was supposed to be meeting with creditors. There were photos of a villa in Monaco. "Our new home," the caption read. And then I saw it. A photo of a woman, blonde, young, wearing a bikini, and wearing my mother's sapphire necklace. He hadn't pawned it. He hadn't sold it to save us. He had given it to his mistress. A sob rose in my throat, but I choked it down, turning it into fuel. I switched to his email. I searched for lawyer. I found a thread with a man named Julian V. Subject: Asset shielding complete. Marcus, the trust is finalized. The bankruptcy court has bought the story. As long as Elena stays in the dark and keeps working, her income supports the hardship narrative. We can file for divorce in 3 months on the grounds of irreconcilable differences due to financial stress. You walk away clean. She gets the debt. He was using me as a human shield. My diner wages were the prop that made his fake poverty look real to the IRS. I needed copies. I couldn't just take the phone, he would notice it was gone. I pulled out my cracked Android. I started taking photos of every email, every bank statement, every incriminating text. Swiss global balance, $12,400,000. Taman Holdings, $8,500. Ciro's dollar, $20 million. He had $20 million, and he made me beg for extra shifts to buy toilet paper. I worked fast. The bathroom light hummed. My fingers flew across the screens. I found one last email. Sent today. Subject: Tomorrow's meeting. Meeting confirmed for 10 a.m. at the St. Regis Hotel. The buyer for the bankrupt shell company is ready to sign. Bring the physical ledger. He was selling the empty shell of his company tomorrow to officially close the book on his past life. He would be at the St. Regis, one of the most expensive hotels in the city, while I was supposed to be pouring coffee at the diner. I had everything I needed. I wiped the screen of the burner phone with a towel to remove my fingerprints. I closed all the apps. I locked it. I crept back into the bedroom. Marcus rolled over, mumbling something in his sleep. I froze, clutching the phone to my chest. He settled back down. I slipped the phone back into his jacket pocket. I climbed back into the futon, shivering. Not from the cold, but from the adrenaline. I looked at Marcus's sleeping face. He looked peaceful, innocent. I wanted to shake him awake. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stab him with the kitchen knife. But that would be too easy. That would be a crime of passion. No, I was going to do something much worse. I was going to let him wake up, put on his suit, and go to his library job. And then, I was going to introduce myself to the St. Regis Hotel. Sleep tight, darling, I whispered into the darkness, because tomorrow, the market crashes. The next morning, do you have $5? Marcus asked, standing by the door. My subway card is empty. He looked pathetic in his worn-out chinos and rumpled shirt. He was playing the part perfectly. He needed $5 from me to go to a meeting where he would discuss million. It's in my purse, I said, forcing a smile. Good luck today, honey. Thanks, he said, taking the cash. I have a good feeling about today. As soon as the door clicked shut, I moved. I didn't go to the diner. I called in sick. I went to the back of the closet, to the one garment bag I had refused to sell. I unzipped it, my black Chanel blazer, my armor. I spent an hour on my hair and makeup. I covered the dark circles under my eyes. I put on the blazer. I wasn't the diner waitress anymore. I was Elena Sterling, and I was going to war. I took the subway uptown, surrounded by tired commuters, clutching my cracked phone like a weapon. I arrived at the St. Regis at 9:55 a.m. The lobby smelled of fresh lilies and old money. The marble floors shone under the golden light of crystal chandeliers. I scanned the room, and there he was. Marcus wasn't wearing his rumpled chinos. He was sitting in a velvet booth in the corner, wearing a bespoke navy suit that I recognized. He must have kept a stash of clothes in his car or a gym locker. He looked powerful, confident. He was sitting across from a man with gray hair, the buyer. On the table between them lay a thick, leather-bound book. The physical ledger. Marcus was laughing, pouring water from a crystal carafe. He looked like the man I married, the man who didn't exist anymore. I walked across the lobby. My heels clicked on the marble. Click, click, click. I didn't stop until I was standing right next to their table. Marcus, I said, my voice cool and steady. He froze. The glass of water stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked up. His eyes went wide. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. Sirolana. He choked out. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work. The buyer looked at me, then at Marcus. Is this the wife? I thought you said she was incapacitated. I'm feeling much better, thank you, I said, smiling at the stranger. I pulled out a chair and sat down. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and placed it on the table, screen facing up. It showed the photo of the mistress wearing my mother's necklace. Gentlemen, I said, folding my hands on the table. I believe we need to renegotiate the terms of this sale, because half of that ledger belongs to me. Marcus looked at the phone. He looked at me. And for the first time in 6 months, I saw real fear in his eyes. He texted me that I was homeless as of noon, unaware that I was already in a cab headed to the FBI, with a pocket full of evidence and a necklace I was about to pawn for a war chest. I walked into the gold-plated lobby of the St. Regis Hotel wearing my grease-stained diner uniform and non-slip shoes. The concierge looked at me like I was a cockroach skittering across a wedding cake, but I didn't care. I marched straight into the dining room where my bankrupt husband was eating lobster Benedict with his mistress, who was wearing my dead mother's necklace. I wasn't there to beg for him back. I was there to blow up his life, starting with his multi-million-dollar business deal. The contrast was cinematic perfection. The dining room of the St. Regis was a cathedral of wealth, high ceilings, crystal chandeliers that tinkled softly in the air-conditioned breeze, and the low, polite hum of billionaires discussing mergers. And then there was me, Elena, wearing a polyester apron that smelled of burnt bacon and despair, with dark circles under my eyes from sleeping on a lumpy futon. I spotted them immediately. They were sitting at the best table by the window, bathed in soft morning light. Marcus looked like a king. He was wearing a navy Italian suit, laughing, holding a mimosa. Next to him sat a woman who looked like a walking Instagram filter. Blonde, glowing skin, expensive silk dress. And around her neck, the sapphire, my sapphire. The deep blue stone caught the sunlight, flashing a brilliant, mocking azure. Opposite them sat an older man in a gray suit, the buyer from the email. He had a leather folio open in front of him. A pen was poised in his hand. They were signing. Right now, my blood turned to ice, then to fire. I didn't storm over screaming. That's what crazy people do. I needed to be surgical. I needed to destroy his credibility without revealing that I had hacked his phone. I grabbed a silver pitcher of water from a distracted busboy's station. I held it tight, the condensation cooling my burning palm. I walked toward their table. Marcus was mid-sentence, and the assets are clean, Mr. Henderson. It's a simple transfer of the shell entity. The bankruptcy court has already cleared the liability. More water for the table, I asked, my voice sickly sweet. Marcus froze. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked up. His eyes went wide. His jaw literally dropped. For a second, he looked like a deer in headlights, trying to process the glitch in his matrix. His poverty-stricken wife was standing over him in a 5-star hotel. He choked out. The mistress looked up, annoyed. Marcus, who is the help? Why is she talking to you? I'm not the help, I said, looking directly at the blonde woman. I'm the wife. You know, the one who supposedly pawned that necklace you're wearing to keep him out of jail. The blonde woman's hand flew to her throat. She looked at Marcus. You said you bought this at an auction in Paris H. Marcus stammered, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. He stood up, knocking his chair back. Elena, what are you doing here? You're making a scene. Go home. We'll talk about this later. Go home, I laughed. A harsh, brittle sound. To the apartment with the mold? Or should I go to the villa in Monaco you're buying? Mr. Henderson, the buyer, looked up sharply. Monaco? Mr. Sterling, you claimed you were destitute. You claimed this sale was a liquidity necessity for legal fees. It is, Marcus said, panic rising in his voice. She's unwell, Mr. Henderson. The stress of the bankruptcy. She's having delusions. Delusions. I stepped closer to Mr. Henderson. I slammed the water pitcher down on the table. Water sloshed onto the expensive linen tablecloth. Sir, I said, looking him in the eye. My husband is currently under investigation for hiding assets during a federal bankruptcy proceeding. If you sign that contract, you become a co-conspirator in a RICO case. The FBI is already watching his accounts. It was a lie, well, a partial lie. The FBI wasn't watching yet, but Mr. Henderson didn't know that. Mr. Henderson snapped his folio shut. He looked at Marcus with disgust. You told me the books were clean, Henderson said, standing up. I don't do business with federal targets, and I certainly don't do business with men who lie to their wives. Wait, Jim, please. Marcus grabbed Henderson's arm. She's lying. She's crazy. Look at her. She's a waitress. I'm leaving, Henderson said, shaking him off. Do not contact me again. He walked away. The deal was dead. The clean exit Marcus had planned was gone. Marcus turned to me. His face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. The charm was gone. The sad husband act was gone. This was the real Marcus. You stupid bitch, he hissed, stepping into my personal space. Do you have any idea what you just did? You just cost me millions. Good, I said, not backing down. Consider it a down payment on what you owe me. I'm going to divorce you, he spat. I'm going to leave you with nothing. I'll make sure you starve in that apartment. You were already doing that, Marcus, I said calmly. Then I turned to the mistress. Chloe. She was shrinking back in her chair, looking terrified. Give it to me, I said, holding out my hand. What? She squeaked. My mother's necklace, I said. Take it off. Now. Marcus gave it to me, she whined, looking to him for support. Give it to her, Chloe, Marcus yelled, wanting to end the humiliation as heads turned all over the restaurant. Just give her the damn jewelry and get her out of here. Chloe fumbled with the clasp. Her manicured nails couldn't get it open fast enough. She unhooked it and dropped it into my grease-stained hand. I clenched my fist around the sapphire. It was warm from her skin. It felt violated. But it was mine again. Thank you, I said. I looked at Marcus one last time. Don't bother coming back to the apartment tonight, I said. I'm changing the locks. Oh wait, we don't own the apartment, do we? So I guess I'll just see you in court. You have no money for a lawyer. Marcus laughed, a cruel barking sound. You're selling eggs for tips, Elena. I will crush you. We'll see, I said. I turned and walked out of the dining room. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. My legs felt like jelly. I walked through the lobby, past the staring concierge, and out into the bright sunlight of the city street. I leaned against the stone wall of the hotel and inhaled deeply. I looked at the necklace in my hand. I had won the battle. But the war had just begun. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. It was a text from Marcus. You made a big mistake. You think you're clever. Watch your back. I'm canceling the lease on the apartment. You're homeless as of noon. I stared at the text. He thought he had played his trump card. He thought making me homeless would break me. He didn't know that while he was shouting at me in the restaurant, my old Android phone, which I had kept recording in my pocket, had captured the entire conversation. I had his voice on tape admitting the Monaco villa, admitting the deal. You just cost me millions. That was an admission of having millions to lose. I hailed a cab. I didn't care that I couldn't afford it. Where to? The driver asked. The nearest Apple store, I said. And then, the FBI field office. I wasn't going back to the apartment. I wasn't going back to the diner. I had 5 gigabytes of data on a cloud server, a recording of his confession, and a sapphire necklace worth $50,000. I was going to pawn the necklace, for real this time, and I was going to use the money to hire the meanest, dirtiest forensic accountant in the city. Marcus Sterling wanted to play dirty? He was about to learn that when you drag a woman through the mud, she eventually learns how to throw it. He begged me to take $10 million to let him board the plane, but I watched them handcuff him instead, telling him I didn't want half. I wanted it all. Marcus wasn't lying when he said he would crush me. By the time I got back to our squalid apartment building, the locks were changed, and my few remaining belongings, clothes, books, photos, were dumped on the sidewalk in the pouring rain. He wanted to break me, to leave me shivering in the gutter so I would crawl back and beg. But as I gathered my soaked cardboard boxes, I didn't feel broken. I felt dangerous. The rain plastered my hair to my face as I stood on the street corner, watching my wedding album soak up water in a muddy puddle. It was a pathetic sight. A passerby looked at me with pity, seeing just another woman down on her luck. They couldn't see the fire burning in my chest. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. "Enjoy the streets. I'm boarding a flight to Nice in 3 hours. Don't bother looking for me." Nice. France. He was heading to Monaco. He was running. I looked at the sapphire necklace in my hand. I had fought so hard to get it back from his mistress, and now I had to let it go again. But this time was different. The first time, I sold it to save a liar. This time, I was selling it to buy a sword. I walked 3 blocks to Golden Loan, the only pawn shop still open. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, reflecting on the wet pavement. The broker, a man with thick glasses and thicker cynicism, looked at the necklace. He looked at me, wet, disheveled, wearing a diner uniform. "It's stolen," he said flatly. "It's not." I pulled out my phone. I showed him a photo of me wearing it at my wedding. Then I showed him the appraisal certificate I had saved on my cloud drive. "It's insured for $60,000. I need 40. Cash. Today." He examined the stone with a loupe. He saw the quality. He saw the desperation. "Just 30, he said. 35, I countered. "And a promise that you won't sell it for 30 days. I'm coming back for it." He looked at me. He saw something in my eyes that made him pause. 35, he agreed. "But the interest is 20%. I walked out of the shop with a thick envelope of cash in my pocket. I left my clothes on the street. I didn't need them. I needed a lawyer. I took a cab to the glass and steel skyscraper in the financial district. I walked into the lobby of Steele and Associates. Catherine Steele was the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. She cost $800 an hour, and she ate cheating husbands for breakfast. The receptionist looked at my uniform with disdain. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, slamming the envelope of cash on the marble desk. "But I have a retainer, and I have evidence of a $20 million fraud scheme." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a corner office with a view of the entire city. Catherine Steele sat opposite me. She was sharp, elegant, and terrifying. She looked at the USB drive I had transferred the data to. She scrolled through the bank statements, the emails, the photos of the yacht. "This is," Catherine paused, a slow smile spreading across her face. "This is a masterpiece of stupidity. He put everything in writing." "He thought I was stupid," I said. "He thought I wouldn't know how to unlock a phone." "Men like Marcus always underestimate the wife," Catherine said, closing the laptop. "He's leaving for Monaco tonight. His flight is at 8 p.m. I checked the clock. That's in 2 hours. Catherine picked up her desk phone. She didn't dial a number, she hit a speed dial. "Judge Harrison?" "It's Catherine. I need an emergency ex parte hearing." "Yes, right now. Asset dissipation and immediate flight risk. I have the evidence. I'm sending the file over." "Yes, freeze everything. Bank accounts, passport, real estate. The works." She hung up and looked at me. "We're filing for divorce," she said. "But first, we're filing a temporary restraining order on his assets. By the time he lands in France, if he even takes off, his credit cards won't work in a vending machine." "He's at the airport now," I said. "Can we stop him?" "We can try." Catherine stood up. "Let's go." At the international terminal, Marcus Sterling was feeling invincible. He sat in the first-class lounge, sipping vintage champagne. He had checked his luggage, 3 Louis Vuitton trunks filled with his bespoke suits. He had his ticket to Nice. In 12 hours, he would be on his yacht, the Sea Witch, surrounded by blue water and obedient staff. He checked his phone. No new messages from Elena. She was probably crying in a shelter somewhere. "Mr. Sterling," a lounge attendant approached him. "Your flight is boarding." "Excellent." Marcus stood up, adjusting his blazer. He walked toward the gate, a bounce in his step. He had pulled off the perfect crime. He had hidden the money, shed the dead weight of a wife, and kept his reputation intact. He walked up to the gate agent. He handed over his boarding pass and passport. The agent scanned the pass. Beep! 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 A red light flashed on the console. "One moment, sir." The agent frowned, typing on her keyboard. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, annoyed. "I'm in 1A. Don't tell me you bumped me." "No, sir," the agent said, looking up with a strange expression. "The system says, do not board." "Excuse me," Marcus laughed. "That's ridiculous. Try it again." She tried again. "Beep, beep, beep." "Sir, I can't let you on the plane," she said. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus raised his voice. People started to stare. "I am a Diamond Medallion member! Fix this!" Two men in dark suits approached the gate. They weren't airline staff, they were TSA, accompanied by a Port Authority police officer. "Marcus Sterling." One of them asked. "Yes, finally, someone with authority. Tell this woman to let me board my flight." "Sir, we have a flag on your passport," the officer said. "Issued by the family court roughly 20 minutes ago. You've been designated a flight risk pending an emergency hearing." Family court. Marcus went pale. That's impossible. My wife is a waitress. She doesn't have a lawyer." "She does now," a voice said behind him. Marcus spun around. I was standing there, just outside the security rope. Catherine Steele was next to me, holding a sheaf of legal papers. I was still in my diner uniform, but I felt like I was wearing armor. "Elena," Marcus whispered. He looked at me, then at the police, then at the plane that was about to leave without him. "You missed your flight, Marcus," I said, stepping closer. "And don't bother trying to buy another one. Your accounts are frozen. All of them, even the one in the Cayman Islands." You hacked me," he hissed, lunging toward me. The police officer stepped in between us, putting a hand on Marcus's chest. "Step back, sir." "She stole my phone. She stole my data. This is illegal," Marcus shouted, spit flying from his mouth. Actually, Catherine stepped forward, cool as ice. "It's perfectly legal to access marital assets and records in a community property state. And since you didn't declare those $20 million in your bankruptcy filing, I think the FBI might be more interested in the illegal part of this conversation." "FBI." The color drained from Marcus's face completely. "Just stand." "You wouldn't." He looked at me, his eyes pleading for the first time. "Elena, baby. They'll put me in jail." "Federal prison? You don't want that." "We can work this out. I'll give you half. 10 million. Just call them off." I looked at him. I remembered the rain on my wedding album. I remembered the mold in the apartment. I remembered the necklace on his mistress's neck. "I don't want half, Marcus," I said. "What do you want?" He begged. "I want it all," I said. "And I want you to feel exactly how I felt last night. Cold, wet, and completely alone." I nodded to the officer. "He's all yours." The officer turned Marcus around. "Mr. Sterling, we also have a warrant for your arrest regarding bankruptcy fraud. Hands behind your back." Click. Click. The sound of the handcuffs was the sweetest music I had ever heard. As they dragged him away, Marcus looked back at me. He was crying. Real tears this time. "Elena, Elena, please." I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just turned to Catherine. "So," I said, "about that divorce filing. Let's go get you a hotel room," Catherine smiled. "On the firm. We have a lot of paperwork to do tomorrow." I walked away from the gate. I watched the plane to Nice pull away from the jetway through the window. He wasn't going to Monaco. He was going to a cell that was much smaller and much moldier than the apartment he tried to leave me in. He signed away $20 million with a shaking hand to save his life, and I walked out of that prison to buy back the only thing that ever mattered, my mother's necklace. Marcus spent his first night in federal custody sleeping on a thin cot that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Just 24 hours ago, he was ordering vintage champagne and planning a new life in Monaco. Now, his biggest concern was avoiding eye contact with the tattoo-covered inmate on the top bunk. While he was rotting in a holding cell, I was sitting in a high-rise office, watching my lawyer systematically dismantle his entire empire. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in the hotel suite Catherine's firm had arranged for me. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. The grease-stained diner uniform was in the trash. I was wearing a sharp, charcoal gray blazer, tailored trousers, and heels that clicked with authority on the marble floor. I had spent a small fortune of the pawn shop money on a haircut and makeup. I wasn't dressing for vanity. I was dressing for war. "Ready?" Catherine asked, stepping into the room. She held a thick leather binder. "The paperwork is drafted." "It's brutal, Elena. We're asking for 100% of the marital assets, plus punitive damages for fraud. We're arguing that since the assets were hidden to defraud you specifically, they should be awarded to you as restitution before the IRS takes their cut." "Will he sign it?" I asked, adjusting my collar. "He doesn't have a choice," Catherine smirked. "I just got off the phone with the prosecutor. Guess who else is in custody and singing like a canary?" I guessed. Chloe. Catherine nodded. "They picked her up for possession of stolen property." "Your necklace." She flipped immediately. She gave them the location of the physical ledgers Marcus hid in a storage unit. "She's claiming she was a victim of his manipulation, too. She's throwing him under the bus to save her own skin." I felt a cold satisfaction. Marcus had surrounded himself with people who loved money, not him. It was poetic that his own greed was now eating him alive. "Let's go see him," I said. The Federal Detention Center was a fortress of gray concrete and steel. The air inside was recycled and stale. We went through security, surrendering our phones and bags. The cinematic atmosphere shifted from the warm luxury of the hotel to the harsh, fluorescent reality of incarceration. We waited in a small, private attorney-client room. A metal table bolted to the floor, 3 chairs, a camera in the corner. The heavy steel door buzzed and clanked open. Marcus was led in by a guard. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. His hands were cuffed to his waist. He looked terrible. His hair was messy, his eyes were bloodshot, and he hadn't shaved. The arrogance that had defined him for 10 years was gone, replaced by a jittery, nervous energy. The guard unhooked one hand so he could sit, then left us alone. Marcus looked at me. He blinked, as if trying to reconcile the woman in the power suit with the wife he had left in the rain. "Alana," he croaked. "You came." "I did," I said, sitting down. I didn't smile. I didn't reach for his hand. "Thank God," he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "You have to get me out of here, babe. It's a mistake. Tell your lawyer to drop the restraining order on the accounts. I can pay bail. I can fight this. We can go to Monaco together. Just you and me. I'll leave Chloe, I promise." I looked at Catherine. She opened the leather binder and slid a document across the metal table. "This isn't a bail hearing, Marcus." Catherine said coolly, "This is a settlement agreement." Marcus looked at the papers. "Divorce? Now? Elena, I'm facing 20 years. You're kicking me when I'm down?" "I'm not kicking you, Marcus," I said, leaning forward. "I'm burying you. Unless you sign." "Sign what?" He flipped through the pages. His eyes widened. This gives you everything. The Swiss accounts, the Cayman holdings, the real estate, the yacht. You want everything?" "It's restitution," I said. "For the fraud, for the emotional distress, for making me sell my mother's necklace while you bought diamonds for your mistress. I can't sign this." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "If I give you the money, I can't pay for a defense attorney. I'll be defenseless." "You're already defenseless," I said. Chloe flipped. "Marcus." She gave them the storage unit key. "The feds have the physical ledgers. They know about the money laundering for the cartels." Marcus went dead silent. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a wax figure. "Cartels," he whispered. "How do you?" "We saw the emails," Catherine interjected. "You weren't just hiding your own money. You were washing money for the organization. That's not white-collar crime, Marcus. That's get shanked in the shower crime." Marcus started to shake. He knew exactly who he had been dealing with. He knew that if he went to general population prison without protection, he was a dead man. "Here is the deal," I said, my voice steady. "You sign the assets over to me. All of them. In exchange, I will petition the court to treat you as a cooperating witness in the financial fraud case. I will tell the judge that you confessed to me and tried to make amends. It might knock 5 years off your sentence. and it might get you into a protective custody wing instead of General Pop. Stays today. Then I walk out of here, I said. I testify that you are a pathological liar who tried to flee the country. Catherine hands over the unredacted emails to the cartel task force, and you go to prison with zero money, zero friends, and a target on your back. Marcus looked at the pen. He looked at me. I loved you, he whispered, a tear sliding down his cheek. In the beginning, I really did. No, you didn't, I said softly. You loved owning me. And when I stopped being an asset and started being an expense, you liquidated me. I tapped the paper. Sign or die. It was a harsh ultimatum, but he had left me to starve. I was just returning the favor. Marcus picked up the pen. His hand shook violently. Scratch, scratch. He signed the papers. He signed away the yacht. He signed away the villa. He signed away the $20 million he had stolen from investors and laundered for criminals. Catherine snatched the papers back before the ink was dry. Smart choice, Catherine said. I stood up. Elena, Marcus said, looking up at me like a lost child. Will you visit me? Once I'm settled. I looked at him. The man in the orange jumpsuit. The man who had been my world for 5 years. No, I said. I have a lot of work to do. I have to manage my new estate. I turned my back on him. Guard. Catherine called out. The heavy door opened. We walked out into the corridor. The buzz of the door locking behind us sounded like closure. As we walked back through the security checkpoint, Catherine checked her phone. The judge just signed the order. She smiled. The transfer is authorized. You are officially a very wealthy woman, Elena. I walked out of the prison and into the bright, blinding sunlight. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. What now? Catherine asked. Do you want to go celebrate? Champagne lunch? I thought about it. I had $20 million. I could go anywhere. I could buy anything. No, I said. I have one more stop to make. Where? The pawn shop, I said. I have 30 days to buy back my necklace, but I think I'll go get it today. I hailed a cab. This time, when the driver asked where to, I didn't hesitate. Golden Loan, I said. And wait for me. I'll be quick. I had my life back. I had my legacy back. And Marcus? He had exactly what he claimed to have at the beginning of this mess. Nothing. I sold the yacht and the villa to build a foundation in the very apartment where he tried to break me, telling the next victim who walked through my door. You don't need money, you just need to know where to look. The neon sign of the pawn shop buzzed with the same erratic flicker as before, but this time, the woman walking through the door wasn't desperate. I placed a stack of crisp $100 bills on the scratched glass counter, interest included, and watched the broker unlock the safe. He handed me the velvet box containing my mother's sapphire necklace. As I clasped it around my neck, I felt the final weight of my marriage fall away. I had bought back my history using the money my husband stole to erase it. The broker counted the cash, raising an eyebrow. You said 30 days. It's been 3 hours. Business improved, I said, checking my reflection in the security mirror. The sapphire glowed against my skin, reclaiming its rightful place. Keep the change, I'm in. I walked out into the city. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking, revealing a sky of brilliant, washed clean blue. 3 months later, the sky was gray again, but only outside the windows of the federal courthouse. Inside, the air was heavy with anticipation. I sat in the gallery, wearing a white suit. White for new beginnings. Catherine sat next to me. All rise, the bailiff announced. Marcus shuffled in. He looked older. The stress of protective custody, where he had spent the last 90 days looking over his shoulder, had aged him 10 years. His hair was thinning, and he had lost the arrogant posture of the man who used to order bottles of wine that cost more than my car. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. Judge Harrison read the sentencing. It was a plea deal, thanks to the cooperation I had forced out of him, but it wasn't a slap on the wrist. Marcus Sterling, the judge, boomed. For wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Furthermore, pursuant to the settlement agreement, 100% of your seized assets remain forfeited to the victim. Elena Sterling, as restitution. 12 years. He would be 52 when he got out. He would have no money, no career, and a criminal record that would follow him forever. As the marshals led him away, he paused. He looked at the gallery. He looked at Chloe, who was sitting in the back row weeping. She had received probation and a massive fine that ensured she would be working retail for the rest of her life. Then he looked at me. His lips moved. "I'm sorry." I didn't mouth anything back. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel love. I felt indifference. He was just a stranger who had taught me a very expensive lesson. I walked out of the courthouse and into my new life. With the $20 million in assets, I had options. I could have moved to the villa in Monaco. I could have sailed the yacht, but I sold them. All of them. I sold the yacht to a tech billionaire. I sold the villa to a Russian oligarch. I liquidated every single thing Marcus had bought with his dirty money. I didn't want his ghosts haunting my future. I kept the money, though. I bought the apartment building, the one with the peeling paint and the mold where Marcus had dumped me. I evicted the slumlord who owned it. Then I renovated it. Top to bottom. New plumbing, new windows, new security. But I didn't rent it out for profit. I turned it into the Sapphire Foundation. It was a transitional housing shelter for women escaping financial abuse. Women who, like me, had been told they were worthless. Women who had been trapped in marriages because they didn't have a bank account or a credit score. I hired lawyers to help them find hidden assets. I hired forensic accountants to trace their husband's money. I gave them a safe place to sleep, fresh clothes, and the one thing I had needed most. A shark of a lawyer. One afternoon, a year later, I was sitting in my office on the top floor of the renovated building. The sun was streaming in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My assistant knocked on the door. "Alina? There's a new intake downstairs." She's terrified. Her husband told her he went bankrupt and they had to sell her car. She thinks she has nothing. I stood up. I touched the sapphire necklace at my throat. "Send her up," I said. "And get Catherine on the phone. Tell her we have another audit to do." The woman walked in. She was young, shivering, holding a plastic bag of clothes. She looked broken. She looked exactly like I did the night I stood in the rain. "I don't have any money to pay you," she whispered, looking at the floor. "You know, it's funny how the smallest details can unravel everything." I pulled out my tablet. "What's your husband's name?" I asked. "And do you know his passcode?" She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time. My husband tried to bury me in poverty. He tried to erase my identity. Instead, he gave me a career. He gave me a purpose. And he gave me the capital to burn his kind of world to the ground, one lawsuit at a time. I looked out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there were other men like Marcus, thinking they were smarter than their wives, thinking they could hide the money. They were wrong, because now, the wives had me, and I was just getting started. If you loved this story of justice served, make sure to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what's the biggest secret you've ever discovered? Thanks for watching.